You ever look at someone you love and realize you don't know them at all? That's how it started for me. A marriage, 15 years strong, a house that smelled like coffee and crayons, and one night that tore all of it apart. I'm not the kind of man who spies on his family, or at least I wasn't. But that night, midnight exactly, something told me to check the camera. You know that gut feeling that whispers, something isn't right? Yeah, that. Turns out, my gut was screaming. On the screen, I saw my wife, sneak into our daughter's room. She moved like she'd done it before, and what she did next, well, it changed how I see everything. Long story short, trust is a fragile thing. Kinda like my sanity right now. Stick around. You're going to want to hear this. Before I tell you what really happened, hit that like button if you've ever felt that chill down your spine when something just didn't add up. Alright. Let's rewind. Back to when everything still looked normal. Back then, life felt steady. The kind of steady that makes you forget how quickly everything can shift. Mornings smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee. My wife, Jenna, would hum that same tune while helping our daughter, Lucy, pack her school bag. I'd grumble about the traffic, and Lucy would giggle like it was the funniest thing on earth. It was ordinary. Boring even. And boring can be dangerous because that's when you stop paying attention. Jenna and I had our ups and downs. What couple doesn't after 15 years? She was the calm one, the planner. I was the fixer, or at least I like to think I was. Lately, though, she seemed far away. You know that feeling when someone's in the same room but not really there? Her eyes had started missing me. I'd talk and she'd nod, but her mind was orbiting somewhere else. I chalked it up to stress. She worked long hours at the hospital, and our schedules sometimes overlapped like two strangers sharing a bus stop. Then little things started happening around the house. Stuff that only stands out when you string it together. Lucy's door would creak open at night. Not fully, just a sliver. Toys shuffled on their own. I once woke up to find her blanket missing, only for it to be neatly folded at the foot of her bed come morning. Jenna would say it was Lucy's sleepwalking phase. Funny thing is, I never saw her walk. Just her door move, by itself. One night, I got home late from work, and found Jenna sitting in the dark living room, eyes glued to the baby monitor screen. No words, just that eerie blue glow on her face. When I asked if Lucy was okay, she smiled too quick and turned the thing off. Said she was just checking. I don't know why, but something about that smile stuck with me. It was the kind you practice. At first, I told myself to let it go. Don't snoop, don't assume. That's what good husbands do, right? Trust. But something in the house felt off. The air at night, the rhythm of the walls. I started leaving my office door cracked open, just to listen. I swear I could hear soft whispers, like lullabies mixed with apologies. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I wanted a problem to solve. But deep down, fear had already moved in. So I decided to buy a camera. Nothing fancy, just a tiny one for peace of mind. I placed it on the hallway shelf outside Lucy's room. Hidden but useful. I told myself it was for safety, that if Lucy really was sleepwalking, I'd catch it. But if I'm honest, I was hoping to catch something else. Or someone. That night sleep didn't come easy. I lay awake, watching the ceiling fan slice through the dark, counting each slow rotation like it would tell me the truth. Down the hall, a floorboard creaked, and that's when everything started to unravel. The next night, I set the camera to record. A small red light blinked like a heartbeat. I told myself it was no big deal, that I'd look at the footage in the morning, get my answers, and sleep better. But you know how that whisper of dread works. It doesn't let you wait. It sits on your chest, daring you to look. Around 11:45, I woke up. Not from a sound. Not even from the urge to check. My body just knew. I slipped out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake Jenna. But here's the part that still chills me. When I glanced toward her side of the bed, it was empty. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe she'd gone for water, or to check on Lucy. But when I stepped into the hallway, I saw the faint glow from the camera's LED. I could hear soft movements, almost measured, like someone counting their steps. My throat went dry. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away, to pretend I hadn't seen anything. But curiosity has teeth. It bites until you bleed. She moved slowly, like a shadow rehearsing. I was close enough to see the hem of her nightgown brush against the floor. She opened our daughter's door with care, the hinges sighing low, like even they didn't want to disturb the moment. I wanted to say her name, to ask her what she was doing, but fear glued me to the wood. After a few seconds, she was gone, completely swallowed by the darkness of Lucy's room. I stood in the hallway, my heart drumming so loud I was certain it would wake the whole house. I waited. 30 seconds. A minute, 2, then nothing. No sound, no light, just the thick, heavy quiet that follows when the world pauses to watch what you'll do next. I stumbled back into our bedroom, shut the door, and took a breath that felt stolen. I told myself there had to be a reason. Maybe Lucy was sick. Maybe Jenna had heard her crying. I tried to believe all those maybes until sunrise. When morning came, the first thing I did was check Lucy. She was snoring softly, stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Peaceful as ever. No sign of distress, no sign of anything. Jenna was already in the kitchen, humming her song, pouring coffee like nothing happened. I watched her for a good minute before she noticed me. "You look tired," she said, smiling over her cup. I just nodded. Later that evening, with Jenna out of the house, I finally sat down to review the footage. My hands trembled as I opened the file. The timestamp showed midnight exactly. Jenna appeared at the edge of the frame, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. She wasn't carrying flowers or medicine. She was carrying something else. And when she leaned over Lucy's bed, my whole world tilted. I can still remember the sound of that file opening, the faint click, the hum of the laptop fan, the silence stretching thin around me. The camera footage loaded, grainy gray shadows filling the screen. Midnight sharp. My wife entered the frame like a ghost who already knew where every squeaky floorboard was. She moved toward Lucy's room with a stillness that didn't feel human. No hesitation, no pause, just precision. The closer she got to the bed, the colder the room around me felt, even though I was just watching a recording. I leaned forward, trying to understand what I was seeing, but every part of me wanted to look away. Nothing good ever comes from watching too long. For a second, she just stood there beside our sleeping daughter, head tilted, that curtain of hair half hiding her face. Her shoulders trembled like someone trying not to cry. I thought, okay, maybe she's just checking on her. Maybe I built this thing up in my head. But then she reached out. She didn't touch Lucy exactly. It was stranger than that. Her fingers hovered an inch above our daughter's hair, trembling. Her other hand clutched something small, metallic, reflecting the faint light. I couldn't tell what it was. Too shiny, too deliberate. At first it looked like scissors. My stomach flipped, and then she whispered something. The camera didn't catch every word, but I could make out fragments. Safe now. Just quiet now. Her voice had that tone people use when they're soothing and threatening at the same time. The hardest part? Lucy turned in her sleep and smiled, like she knew, like it wasn't the first time. I paused the video right there. My palm stung. I'd been gripping the desk so tightly the edge dug into my skin. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but what would I even say? Hey, my wife is in our daughter's room holding something shiny at midnight? That's not the kind of sentence people come back from. After a few deep breaths, I pressed play again. Jenna leaned closer until her hair nearly brushed Lucy's face. She stayed there for a long moment, completely still, and then she turned suddenly, toward the camera. I swear to you, she looked straight at it, straight through the lens, straight through me. There's no logical way she could have known it was there. It was hidden behind a stack of folded blankets. But in that split second, I saw the corners of her mouth twist. Not a smile, but something like understanding, as if she'd been waiting for me to see. The footage ended abruptly after that, like the power flicked. No otro file, no motion glitch, just blank. My mind scrambled for explanations. Interference, corruption, an error. But the timestamp didn't lie. The file ended at 12:03, the same minute I'd woken up in my bed. I replayed that moment a dozen times before dawn. Each time my pulse thudded harder, my throat clenched tighter. I kept thinking, if she knew, then what else did she know? By morning, I looked like someone who'd lost a fight with their own nightmares. Jenna poured my coffee like usual, humming that same lullaby, eyes bright, clear, unreadable. And then she said it. "You stayed up late again, didn't you?" Just like that. Light. Teasing. The kind of thing a wife says when she catches her husband sneaking one too many late-night news clips. I stared at her, trying to see if there was laughter in her tone or warning. She leaned against the counter, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and smiled. Gentle. Measured. "You worry too much. It's bad for you." I wanted to confront her right there, to ask what she was doing at midnight, but my mouth felt dry, my thoughts slipped like wet glass, because the question that burned louder was one I couldn't speak. "How long has this been happening?" That night I didn't eat. I didn't work. I just sat at the table, staring at Lucy's closed bedroom door, listening to the quiet rhythm of her sleeping breaths through the baby monitor. I thought about taking the camera down. Instead, I added another one, hidden this time, facing the hallway and the bedroom door. If midnight had already stolen my peace once, I wanted to see what else it might take. What I learned the next night changed more than just how I saw Jenna. It changed what I believed about my home, about safety, about myself. The morning after, everything looked exactly the same, and that was somehow the cruelest part. Same sunlight leaking through the curtains, same smell of coffee, same cereal crunch echoing from Lucy's bowl. But beneath all that forced normalcy, something in me had cracked. Every sound, every motion, every breath in that house felt wrong now. I wanted to ask Jenna what I'd seen. But how do you start that conversation? "Honey, why were you staring at our sleeping daughter like a statue at midnight?" Even imagining it sounded insane, so I played along. I kissed her cheek, mumbled a weak, "Have a good day," and watched her disappear out the door. The second she left, I replayed the footage again. Every frame, every pause, looking for proof that my eyes had misread it all. Maybe the camera had glitched. Maybe it wasn't as clear as I thought. But no, the look on Jenna's face, that moment she turned toward the lens, was undeniable. It wasn't fear. It wasn't surprise. It was awareness, almost smug. That realization hollowed me out. I felt like a stranger in my own life. My home, the place I built to keep my family safe, had turned into a stage, and I had no idea what play was unfolding. Sleep became a stranger, too. At night, I'd lie there listening for footsteps, for whispers through Lucy's door. Sometimes I'd imagine I heard them, jump out of bed, rush to the hallway. Nothing. Just silence mocking me. During the day, Jenna smiled more. That might sound comforting, but it wasn't. Her smiles had too much precision, like someone performing normal rather than living it. She even started packing Lucy's lunches again herself, a small gesture that somehow felt like a power move. Maybe I was paranoid, but once you start doubting reality, even sandwiches look suspicious. The stress chewed through me quietly, like termites under the floorboards. I stopped answering texts. My coworkers said I looked drained. I told them I wasn't sleeping well. They laughed, said, "Welcome to parenthood." If only they knew. By the fourth night, I was unraveling. Every creak sounded like a countdown. I'd startle at my own reflection. Part of me started wondering if this was the revenge of my own mind, some twisted payback for spying, for mistrusting the person I swore to love. Still, I couldn't stop watching that footage, hoping maybe I'd missed a detail. And then something did stand out. Right before the video cut off, in the second her face turned toward the camera, her lips moved. 2 words. Clear if you looked close enough. Now, I've replayed that fraction of a second 100 times, and I know I'm not wrong. She whispered, "I know." After that, paranoia wasn't just a visitor. It moved in, unpacked, and started redecorating my sanity. Every time she looked at me, I wondered if she could tell that I knew she knew. It was madness. A quiet, polite sort of madness that followed me to work, to dinner, to bed. Lucy, bless her innocence, never noticed. She still ran into Jenna's arms every morning, still laughed that wild little laugh that used to make me forget all my problems, Seeing that only made it worse. I couldn't decide whether to feel grateful or terrified. By the end of that week, I made a decision. If I couldn't ask Jenna outright, I'd have to catch her again. Catch her doing whatever it was she thought she was hiding. One more camera, one more night. Just one more look. Because once you've seen the crack in the glass, you can't stop staring until it shatters. The next evening, the air in our house felt heavier. Like it knew. I moved calmly enough. Dinner routine, bedtime story, lights out. But my heartbeat never slowed. When Jenna kissed me goodnight and turned away, I caught the faintest trace of that same perfume she only wore for special occasions. It was such a small thing, but it hit like a warning shot. Once she fell asleep, I crept out of bed. The new camera I'd placed that day blinked faintly from the bookshelf. One more hidden eye. Even installing it had made me tremble. It isn't easy admitting you're turning your life into evidence. I checked each angle twice and whispered to myself, just one more night. At 11:59, the house began to feel alive. The soft ticking of the hallway clock suddenly deafening. The refrigerator's hum stretching out like a drone. Then floorboards creaked. Slow, steady, deliberate. Jenna again. Through the monitor's grainy feed, I watched her pass through the hallway, expressionless, one hand at her side, the other clutching that same object. The metallic glint caught the camera, but this time I was ready. I adjusted the brightness on the playback app, zoomed in live, but the light bent strangely, as if the object was reflecting more than should be there. She opened Lucy's door. I clenched my jaw, waiting for movement, whispers, something. Instead, the screen flickered. The video glitched, went black for half a second, then came back. But the hallway view was different. Jenna was gone. Lucy's door was closed. Confused, I checked the timestamps. They jumped forward 2 minutes. 2 whole minutes gone. My throat tightened as I rewound, trying to catch some frame the system might have saved. Nothing. Clean cut. The kind only a human hand makes. And then I noticed the small red light on the camera wasn't blinking anymore. Dead. I left the monitor, hurried to the hallway, barefoot on cold wood. Everything was still. Lucy's door was shut tight. I didn't dare open it, not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I was afraid of how Jenna might react if she was still inside. I stood there for a few seconds listening, the air pressing on my eardrums before I turned around and almost collided with Jenna. She was just standing behind me, in the shadows, calm as midnight. Couldn't sleep, she asked. Her tone was soft, casual, but her eyes didn't blink. I heard something, I managed. Thought Lucy might have... Lucy's fine, she cut in, voice flat. You should trust me on that. We stared at each other, neither of us moving. It was one of those moments where time stretches thin, every breath loaded with what you don't say. Then she smiled, a small, quick tilt of her lips, and walked back toward the bedroom, leaving me rooted to the floor. Later, when I checked the cameras again, the hallway feed was gone from memory, completely erased, as if it never existed. Every other file was untouched, days, weeks of video, except for that one section. That's when panic gave way to something worse. The realization that she knew exactly what she was deleting, and that she must have known about the other cameras too. The next morning, she acted like nothing ever happened. Pancakes, laughter, morning light dancing off the kitchen tiles. I watched her flip a pancake and hum that same tune. And somewhere inside me, something hardened. Fear had kept me quiet long enough. That night, I decided not just to record. I decided to confront, because whatever Jenna was doing at midnight, it wasn't just about secrecy anymore. It was about control. And if she thought she still had mine, she was about to learn she didn't. I waited until Lucy fell asleep before confronting Jenna. The silence of the house wrapped around us like wet linen, heavy, cold, inevitable. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone, acting casual, but there was a certain tension in the set of her jaw, like she'd been expecting me to show up. I placed the small flash drive on the table between us. You erased some footage, I said. My voice surprised me. Too calm, too flat, like it didn't belong to me. You've been walking into Lucy's room at midnight. Tell me why. Jenna's fingers froze mid-scroll. She looked up, eyes slow and deliberate, and then she smiled. Not out of guilt, but pity. I didn't erase anything, she said. You just weren't supposed to see that. Those words hit me like a slap I didn't feel until 3 seconds later. What was I not supposed to see? She sighed, glanced toward the hallway, as if checking Lucy's door. Then she whispered, "It's not about Lucy. It's about me." For a second, I thought she was confessing to something dark, criminal, unfixable. I braced for the worst, but what came sounded almost impossible. She told me she was sleepwalking, that she'd been for weeks. At first I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Sleepwalking doesn't make you stare into a camera and whisper, "I know. I wasn't sleepwalking." Then, she replied. The tone in her voice froze the air between us. When you started recording, she continued, I began remembering pieces, things I didn't want to remember. That room. It's where I used to hide when Lucy was a baby. The night she wouldn't stop crying, when I thought I'd break. Her eyes glassed over. That's what you saw. I wasn't hurting her. I was trying to quiet myself. It should have made me feel relief, but it didn't. Because something still didn't align. Then the object in your hand. What was that? I asked. Her face softened for the first time in days. A locket, she said, and reached into her pocket. She placed it on the table. The same metallic flash from the video gleamed under the kitchen light. It's my mother's. I told you she passed before Lucy was born. Sometimes I forget she's gone. I go in there and talk to her, to remind myself I made it through. The explanation settled between us. Heavy with grief, fragile with truth. For the first time, I saw the exhaustion in her. Years of swallowed cries, years of pretending to be unbreakable. But just as my chest loosened, I noticed something strange about the locket. It wasn't empty. I clicked it open, expecting a photo or a lock of hair. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. Unfolding it revealed a tiny drawing. Stick figures, drawn by a child. 3 of them, a woman, a man, and a little girl. But the man's face was scratched out. Lucy drew that, she said quietly. When? I asked. After that night you yelled in front of her. You don't remember, do you? Then it hit me like a tidal wave. I had shouted once, months ago. Long hours, stress, exhaustion, it all blurred together. Lucy had cried herself to sleep that night, and I'd buried that moment under guilt ever since. Jenna leaned back. You put those cameras up to protect her from me, but maybe you were really protecting yourself from what you've done. Her words carved into my chest. I wanted to deny it, to argue, to reclaim being the victim. But deep down, I knew she wasn't wrong. I stared at the locket again, at that angry little sketch, and felt something crumble inside me. The paranoia, the suspicion. It had all spiraled from fear of what I might find, when the truth was staring from a much closer mirror. Jenna stood, kissed my temple gently and said, Delete the footage, please. Some memories don't deserve to stay alive forever. When she left the room, I sat there listening to the house, realizing it wasn't our marriage that had cracked. It was my faith in myself. But I didn't delete the footage. I copied it, because even if the truth hurts, I needed to remember that night. Not for revenge, for forgiveness. And just before I shut my laptop, I glimpsed the locket's reflection in the black screen. It was closed now, but the faintest whisper echoed in my head. I know. The words still find me sometimes, midnight sharp and merciless. The house feels quieter now, though maybe it's just me listening differently. The cameras are gone. I took them all down the next morning. For a while that blinking red light had meant control, reassurance, proof. Now it only reminds me how little trust can survive once you start treating love like a crime scene. Jenna and I don't talk much about that week. Sometimes she still shoots me a glance that says she knows I kept a copy, and sometimes I pretend I deleted it. We've made a truce of silence. Thin, careful, but it holds. Lucy's the only one untouched by the whole mess, at least on the surface. She laughs the same way, leaves her shoes in the hallway, hums her mother's tired lullaby without knowing its history. Every time I hear it, I flinch and then force myself to smile. Maybe that's what healing looks like. The quiet choice to stay. There's a particular hour before dawn, when the air in the house settles, and you can almost hear memory moving through the walls. That's when I sit and watch the hallway, not through a lens anymore, just with human eyes. I used to wait for ghosts. Now I wait for peace. Some nights I swear I glimpse my reflection in the dark window, a man still trying to forgive himself. People think betrayal always comes from others. Sometimes it comes from the story you build in your head, from the fear that keeps you from facing your own reflection. I learned that at midnight, in the faint glow of a grainy screen, watching the person I loved most look like a stranger, and realizing the stranger might have been me. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Trust isn't about who you watch. It's about being brave enough to stop watching and start listening. I still hear her voice sometimes in the quiet. "It's safe now," she whispers. Maybe for the first time, she's right.